Greetings. Thanks for joining me. It's Fred in Alaska. What I wanted to share with you today, first, I just want to give locals a heads up. There's reports of road crossings within the last 4 or 5 days. A couple on the Richardson, between mile like 140 and 145. There was a couple sightings, potentially the same one. I don't know. Down off McCarthy Road between the two bridges, when you cross at Chitna there, between that bridge and the other one at the canyon there, there's a couple sightings there, and there's some ongoing activity around Gustavus, down southeast. I want to thank Scott for reaching out and passing that along. That's something that's ongoing and developing, and buddy Scott down there is keeping track of things and trying to get more information as far as that's concerned. What I wanted to share with you today, this comes from actually a familiar area, I should say, the Resurrection Trail. This particular guy, his name's Jeffrey. He liked to mountain bike. This was approximately 2 years before the pandemic, so about 5 years ago now. And so what Jeffrey would like to do is hop on his mountain bike. He had the fat tires, and he would just ride. And he had a little horn, kind of ringy bell thing on his handlebars. He said he would ring it just to let bears know that he's in the area, right? And over the course of the years that he had been riding that particular trail, going from Hope, heading south, going that direction towards like Devil's Pass, he said he would ring his bell every once in a while just because he was moving pretty quick and whatnot. And this particular day, he had passed people that were just hiking. He went around them and all that kind of stuff. And the people were like, hey, we saw a bear. And so he was like, oh, okay, good to know. He kept bear spray, but he didn't pack a gun, which now he does. But anyway, so he's pedaling along, and he hasn't seen sound of anybody. He's not even noticing songbirds of any kind. He said the air was real still, which is real strange because typically he's used to at least a small breeze blowing the leaves around and stuff. Well, he was coming around a little bit of a kick that passes over this creek. And as he comes around, he starts ringing the bell because he sees something brown up ahead of him move off the trail. So he stops, and he's like, gosh, I need to, he wanted to get a fix on where this bear was moving off into the brush so he didn't ride past and get attacked. You know what I mean? Just get that prey chase drive kicked up. So he said he sat there and he was ringing the little bell thing, and the bell he had either rang like little kids, or you push down on it and it was like a quasi air horn, but not very loud. I mean, not as loud as an air horn, right? So he does that a couple times, and he hears movement, and it's moving off. So he's like, okay, all right, good. So he continues on his little way there, and as gets across the little creek and he's heading back on up, he said he got approximately 75 feet, right? And bam, this thing crossed right in front of him on two legs. He said had he been riding any faster, he potentially could have got knocked off his bike, right? He said he'd never been so freaked in his life. When this thing crossed, he said it continued going, but he was so freaked out, he had fallen off his bike, tumbled over, stood up. He's spraying his bear spray in that direction, which he was panic stricken. He didn't know what else to do. So he's spraying the bear spray and big old cloud of bear spray, but the wind started just a slight breeze and blew that cloud right back towards him. So as he's trying to gather himself and get on his bike, he's getting inundated with, this pepper spray. So it changed how he does any of his cycling. He hasn't been to that particular spot, but he hasn't quit. He carries a gun now, and he leaves the spray at home, just because he inadvertently maced himself. I want to thank Jeffrey for sharing that. It was real brief and whatnot. Um, but so a little while back, I was able to sit down with a family down the road here, and they were expressing to me some of the things they were dealing with on their property out in the KGB Point Mac area. And so Stephen and Dakota, uncle and nephew, let me give you a little bit of a backstory. They were at some property out there, and prior to this incident, there was a history of weird screams in the distance, the dogs acting funny, people audibly hearing something stalking them up on the ridge. And initially, they kind of wrote it off as maybe it's the weirdo kind of neighbor guy that gets in people's business. It's kind of strange. And they left it at that, right? So 2 years ago, Stephen and Dakota, uncle and nephew, they were hunting out at that area. And the morning, it was real windy, and, they were making their calls. They weren't having any luck. And they're walking around, right? And so they get to a particular spot, and all of a sudden, it's quiet, and then they hear this scream. Now, when they hear the scream, it's startling because it's, 100 yards-ish away. And with the screaming, this tree, and whatever screaming is obscured by the vegetation, but this tree is bending down and whipping up against another tree. So from their vantage point, they're looking at this thing, and the tree is whipping another tree with this scream going on. Now, Stephen, veteran hunter, Dakota's still a teenager, but still been out in the woods, you know what I mean? It's not like it was something new to them, but Stephen said it scared him, like it startled him. And so he made sure that Dakota had a round in the chamber, and he said they backed out of there. And I asked him, I was like, well, how long did you, face it and back out? And he said the whole way to the truck, which is, okay, I get it. Those kind of things are startling. It's amazing because Stephen and his wife had, there was a road crossing when they were going through Canada. The Sasquatch just crossed the road right in front of them. He guesstimated that one size at about 10 foot, just because it was down in the little drainage ditch or whatever, and it was still, pretty tall. But these occurrences happen. Like, it seems kind of strange. Someone will have an experience, and it seems like they're more susceptible to another one. I've always likened it to when those Finding Waldo books, Where's Waldo? As soon as you know what Waldo looks like and you have it ingrained in your memory, it's easy to find Waldo. You know what I mean? So I liken it to the same thing, because there's certain color variations that kind of change and stuff when these things start moving, and once you know what they truly look like, their coloring and stuff, it gets pretty easy to pick them out. And then your eyes are open, basically. It's real weird phenomenon. But also another experience I want to share with you guys, it came from a lady named Mary. She hauls her own water from the river, and I don't want to gaslight her village or anything like that, but she'd haul her own water. So she would go down to the riverbank, she would dip her bucket, pack it back up, pour it in a bigger bin, and she would fill up this bin and draw from that to boil the water, make her coffee, all that kind of stuff, right? Real subsistence life. She said one morning she didn't have quite enough water for coffee, and she had 2 of her grandsons at the house, and they were sleeping. So she, instead of waking one of them up, she wanted, being a grandma, she let the grandbaby sleep. Me, I would have been like, hey, get your ass up and get the water for grandma. But anyway, she went down to get that bucket of water to at least get the coffee going or whatever. Now, this is approximately 5:30-ish in the morning. And when she got down to the riverbank, she noticed that the area had some weird tracks where she would normally stand, dip the bucket, pull it out, And she was coming down the little embankment to the river, and she's noticing these big barefoot-like tracks, right? And immediately she she remembered stories that her grandma told her. Up until this point, she's a grandma at this point, right? So Mary's remembering the stories of when she was little about the hairy man, right? And she hadn't experienced anything, heard the stories when she was little, believed her relatives. I mean, there was nothing for them to lie about, but she just never seen anything like that. So when she saw the tracks, she said she dipped the bucket and she was looking at the tracks and realized, gosh, you know, these tracks are pretty damn fresh. You know what I mean? And so immediately she got a weird feeling in her stomach. And she said she has a gun in the house, but she so rarely even had an issue with the bear. She was complacent. She really didn't, have anything as far as self-defense. It was in her house, but, she never worried about it. Never had a need to, actually, thankfully. So she climbs back up the little embankment, which is, 3-4 feet at the most. It's kind of sloping. And when she gets to the top of it, she hears a grunt off to her right-hand side. And she said she calmly set the bucket down, turned to her right, and said no. She just put her hand out and said no. And we kind of chuckled, and I was like, well, what made you say, like, no? Where did that come from? And she said she didn't know, but she just needed to tell whatever was making that noise no, stop. And so she says no, and she notices this thing just off in the brush move out of her line of sight. So once it moved and she knew her path was clear, she picked up the bucket and acted like nothing happened and went inside. That's when she woke up her grandsons. And she told them, oh, hey, there's something outside. I think it's a bear. Now, she didn't initially tell them about the tracks down at the river. And, this thing was obviously a lot bigger than a bear that she saw that moved off. And she only saw it briefly. It was just mainly dark figure movement. And, she got no real visual as far as, like, any details. So she sends her grandsons out, with her gun and to chase the bear off, right? Get that bear out of here. And she was sitting down at the table shaking up. And, she's trying to, like, wrap her mind around the fact that this thing was huge and it growled at her, right? Never had anything, never even had real bear problems. Anytime a bear would come around, there was someone else there to run it off, and she never really had to be hands-on with anything, right? As far as running a bear off or whatever, because, guys usually tend to that in the village, when they can. Sometimes a woman's got to do what she got to do. But so her grandsons go out, and they leave the door open, and they go in the direction that she had given them, and she hears them yelling, hey, bear, 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 and she can hear their voices moving off into the brush. There's some black spruce and stuff, so once they reached a certain point inside the trees, it gets real dense, and they didn't move too much further. But she's sitting at the table, just kind of shook up about this, and as she's sitting there, she hears her grandsons just off a little ways, down the trail a little ways at the most. She can clearly hear them. And she's kind of staring at the ground and periodically looking up out the door, right? She said about the second or third time she was catching her breath and shaking, and she looked up. This thing was standing outside, and she saw it perfectly in the daylight. She said it was like a goldenish brown with kind of black hairs intermixed, kind of a grizzled look, but a lot like a blonde bear. She said she was in shock at first. She's just stuck staring at this thing. She said its skin was like a very dark gray, like a wet cement. She said she could tell it had a whole lot of wrinkles, but it also looked, had a weird kind of sheen to its skin texture, like it was real oily, like it had been sweating or something like that. Just a ton of wrinkles, big eyes. She said the eyes were a golden yellow, very bright. They weren't illuminated, they were just bright, kind of like an owl's eyes. And she said this thing just stood there and was looking at her. And she could still hear her grandkids or her grandsons off in the trees making noise to chase this bear off, right? And she's stuck. She's like petrified, can't move. She wants to scream out, something just to get this thing to move along, right? Well, as she's stuck staring at this thing, she hears a skiff coming from downriver. And as soon as that skiff noise started getting closer, because she was right near the bend in the river, so the skiff was out of sight, or just out of sound range. And as soon as it cleared that bend to where you can hear the outboard louder, this thing just took off in the direction of her grandsons. And immediately she's like, my babies, you know what I mean? She jumps up, she runs out the door, and she starts screaming like, watch out, watch out, watch out, you know? And at the same time, this skiff is coming by, and she's outside screaming, and she's not too far from the riverbank. So the skiff hears what's going on. She happens to know the people in the skiff. The skiff turns around, comes right back over to the bank. When the boat comes to the bank, it goes right to the spot where she grabs her water, and there's tracks there, right? And so the guy getting off the boat saw the tracks and immediately stopped, grabbed his rifle, went up the bank. She didn't want to give me the guy's name. She just said it was someone she went to school with and known him forever. Real good guy. He comes up the bank with his rifle, and her grandsons at about the same time are coming back into view, and they're both there. So she's like, oh, thank you. Thank you, Lord, that the kids are safe. So she explains what's really going on at that point. The guys in the boat, they thought they saw something move, but they're down at river level and there's a bank. You know what I mean? So their view is obscured with brush and everything else along the river. People's old boats up on the bank and stuff like that, right? So they saw something, but they didn't know what. But the guy brought up the tracks down there, and he goes, there's a hairy man over here. There's a hairy man. Where'd it go? And the boys were coming from the direction this thing took off in, but they didn't hear anything. They didn't see anything come by them. So as they're standing there as a group, the guy's got his rifle. The grandsons, they have, their grandma's rifle or whatever. And one of the other people in the skiff, another woman, she climbs out. She's saying some things about the tracks. And she mentioned something like, hey, these tracks are just like the ones down by our place. And I guess unbeknownst to Mary, the neighbors down a few bends on the river had the identical tracks right outside their house. These particular people had younger children, and they relayed to her that they got their kids telling them, hey, there was someone looking in our window this morning, and they chalked it up till they saw the tracks. And it just so happened that they were going to get one of their other relatives to help them track this thing, scare it away, get it away from the village. So it's a strange dynamic. You got a neighbor over here who had something. There's something currently happening over here, and just by happenstance, they're on their way to get more help to run this thing off, right? So, they got all that going on, a little meeting of the minds or whatever, and the guy with the rifle that was on the skiffs tells the grandkids, takes the oldest one and says, you come with me, younger one, you stay here. He had the younger one go back down to his skiff because his grandma only had the one rifle, They get down to the skiff to grab his shotgun and stand there with the women with the shotgun, and this gentleman and her grandson were going to go run this thing off, right? So they start down this trail. Now, this is what her grandson expressed to Mary when they got back. So from her grandson's point of view, and she had him tell him many times, so she was very confident, and this is how it played out. They go down the trail a little ways, and the older guy was leading the way, more experience, and he was telling him, be aware, look off to our left and right, these things move quiet, we just want it to go away. And as they're going down the trail, the grandson said that all of a sudden the older guy in front of him got down on one knee and was aiming down the trail. And at this vantage point, the trail was wide open. He didn't see anything, right? And the older guy is telling him, hey, it's right there, it's right there. Well, this thing blended in so well with the trees that the grandson couldn't see it until the older gentleman fired a warning shot that direction, and it moved. So this thing was standing. I mean, he said it was in the open, but he couldn't, it blended in so well The older gentleman fired off a warning shot. The thing took off, and that's when he saw it, right? The movement caught his attention. But he said it blended in so well, it was like just part of the forest. He said he couldn't tell the difference, you know? And which is, oof, you know, that just kind of makes you wonder how many times you've let me not go down that path. But so fires a warning shot, it takes off, and like, according to what she said, he said as soon as it got a little ways away, that's when it started letting out this scream. So back where Mary was, they hear the gunshot. Moments later, they hear this scream. So they're petrified back over here. They don't know what's going on over there. All they hear is a gunshot, this loud scream going away from them, and they don't know what happened. So immediately everyone's kind of worried, and Mary ushers the woman and her other grandson into the house. There's someone still down on the boat. Like, I'm not trying to make light of it, but this poor guy down in the boat, not knowing what's really going on. He's just tending the boat. You know, he's waiting there. He's got the outboard idling. He didn't know how long they were going to be there, you know, so he was ready to go. So after Mary's yelling, this poor guy down there hears all the yelling, kills the motor, makes sure it's tied off real good, goes up and knocks on the door because they had already had the door shut. He's trying to get inside to safety because he doesn't know what's going on. There's gunshots, weird tracks, and screaming off in the distance. So this poor guy is down in the boat like, what the hell's happening, you know? So when he gets to the door and he's pounding on it, he pounded on the door and took 2 steps down, you know, to back away from the door because it swung open, right? There was a small windbreak, and then it was basically open. There was no inner door, really. Anyway, so Mary, from her point of view, wasn't thinking about someone else in the skiff. As the pounding is going on, her grandson with the shotgun was panicked and turned and was about to shoot the door when Mary pushed the gun and said, no, you know, stop. The kid was freaked out. You know, it was about 14, 15 at the time. Well, according to what she said, everyone just goes quiet. No one says, who is it, or, you know, anything. And then the guy started saying, hey, you know, open the door. It's so-and-so. I was down at the boat or whatever. And the other woman snapped out and goes, oh, yeah. She goes and opens the door for him, right? And just as he's coming in the door, the older gentleman that stopped and the older grandson come down the trail. When they get inside, they basically relayed what I already relayed to you. And she said since then, it's been nothing. So it was like her whole life, she heard about him, nothing. And never had an instance of issues or anything. And then all of a sudden, one morning, just doing random shit, grabbing water, you know, it goes down. You know what I mean? And I want to put out a special thank you to Stephen and Dakota. It was a pleasure sitting and speaking with them. You know, it's amazing once you talk to people just how many different things happen out in the woods. So many people have had experiences and they don't know what it was. You know, that's a big theme that I've come across. A lot of people, they're leery to share because they don't know what it was. But then, you know, you break it down, it's, you know, the screams, the weird owl hoots, whistles, things of that nature. You can kind of narrow it down, you know what I mean? But I don't want to make people overly paranoid, but I wanted to share those things with you guys. They were just some of the shorter encounters, the smaller encounters that, you know, I mean, make a 3-minute video out of one of them, you know what I mean? So I wanted to share those with you guys. I'm trying to get caught up. It's a little rough, especially the way I do things, getting back and forth a hold of people and things of that nature. But there's, gosh, I think I'm about 6 or 7 encounters behind as far as sharing with you guys. Those are all coming up soon. What else was there? I know I'm forgetting stuff, so forgive me. Whatever I'm forgetting, I'll put it in the description of the video. I know there's some interviews this Friday, so I'll figure it out. I'll probably put out another video Friday morning or something like that. Thank you for joining me, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.